I'm actually sad. For those who don't know, I'm a guy who, when I read things or I see things, I really internalize them. If I see people going through a lot of pain, physically, mentally, emotionally, or if I read things that kind of give me a story or a brief visual of how someone was laid out, I can generally internalize that pain or that anxiety, and this is really no different. The things I saw in the text messages that were shown, or the correspondence, the back and forth between Mac and his dealer, were really telling to me, and I felt really bad reading them. A lot of truths were exposed to me, and I was under the impression that at the time of his swimming release that he was doing much better than he actually was, and that was not the case. I haven't spoken on Mac Miller since about a year now. It's yeah, we're a good portion into September, and it's been about a year. Now, Mac Miller's dealer was recently charged and arrested. Basically, they are finding him heavily involved in what happened to Mac Miller. And while I do understand why someone would take the approach of jailing him, I do have to again let people know that he's probably not the one that laced the substances that Mac Miller took. See a lot of people rooting for this guy's demise, and I just, when I look at situations like this, I picture some of the older people that I used to associate with, and I can't say that I would have been happy with them receiving the legal backlash that this guy is receiving just for assuming that what they were selling was the correct substance. So for the people out there who don't know, it doesn't really make any sense for this guy to want anything bad to happen to Mac Miller if he is someone who's paying for his product on a regular. It doesn't make sense to try and take him out. He's not just doing that out of this random spite. He probably just didn't know. For those who are wondering why things are laced, it's to save product. Something that a lot of people do when it comes to lacing their substances is crushing it up into powder format, taking some of the original content from it away so that they can stretch it out and make more money in the long game, and they replace it with some other weaker substance, but they don't want it to be ingested or used, and people spread the word around that their product sucks, so they get something cheaper. They get something a little bit more effective, but something that doesn't cost nearly as much, and that's usually where fentanyl comes in. Again, this person making it is not the same person that's selling it. This is the manufacturer, not the distributor. Based off what I read, the oxy pills have fentanyl in them, and that's just a terrible combination, because I've heard and seen a lot of people saying that this arrest is going to encourage users and distributors to buy these kits that you can test your product with. The only issue with those kits are the fentanyl isn't really as detectable as other substances. The dosages when it comes to fentanyl are way smaller. I don't know exactly how significantly smaller, but much smaller than you would other substances, so it's much harder to pick up even if you do use a kit. So chances are, if Mac were to have used a kit, or if his distributor were to have used a kit, they wouldn't have known anyway. What I guess is really telling and kind of extremely sad about the situation is Mac was so far gone and seems so far gone that it didn't necessarily seem like what he was using these substances for were to just maintain a decent state of mind. It didn't seem like he was in the business of using these substances to just satisfy a few quick urges and then get off it and then come back to it a couple weeks or months later. It seemed as if there was a desperation, a want or a need for anything that can give him that immediate high. When I see someone go from recreational use to a necessity, I get really worried. I can't speak to his mental state or why he felt the need to start these substances in the first place, but going from this thing where you feel like it's settling you to this I need it mentality is, I feel, exactly where Mac was. Which saddens me even more because I feel like if this dude didn't give it to him, he would have still ended up ODing from something else, and we would have been in the same position just with a different dealer. I'm sure Mac would have had a little bit more time, but I don't think he would have had much more time because of the desperation I could sense from the messages that he was sending. Bad thing about his dealer, unfortunately, in this situation, at least for me, and I don't want to, but I just have to. I look at the situation and I'm just like, this is a dude that just, unfortunately, yes, you know the risks, you know what you're getting yourself into, but I'm like, this dude didn't know that he was gonna end him. He didn't know that he was gonna, hey, I'm gonna give you something that's gonna take you out. Like he definitely did not know that. I'm sure when the news started spreading around, he was like, oh no, I'm screwed. Screwed in more ways than one, because he can't say that I'm not the one who manufactured it, or else that'd be telling on the manufacturing, and then he'd got in prison, and he doesn't want to do that. On the flip side, if he doesn't say anything, he faces what, 10 to 20 years in prison? That's just awful. And at least in my commentary on this exact situation a year ago, before Mac's situation ever even happened, where I was discussing whether or not emo rap was bad, and I actually remember talking about the opioid crisis at length in that video. I don't want to be one of those people that's being purposefully obtuse and say, oh man, this is simply because of the government, and since they are so strict on, substance policies, that we need to go on ahead and, stand and revolt against them. Because obviously, if you are a user, you know what you're doing. If you're selling, you're doing what you do to stay afloat, but you're also contributing to the problem. The thing people won't discuss about a situation like this is how frequently it actually happens in inner city communities, but these people, not being celebrities, are not likely to get any coverage, and they're less likely to get anywhere in terms of an actual case. Even worse for those communities, when those other people that are also users hear about what happened to other users based off of OD, they look at it and say, that must be a really strong substance. I want to try it. How this thing spreads, it's much more like a sickness than any kind of willful want to OD. And that's why I think, to get people off of this stuff, there needs to be more rehabilitation as opposed to jailing. Like, I get that there are people and leeches and cancers within the community that are gonna sell regardless, but looking at Mac Miller's messages again, it just ripped me up seeing like how much this dude felt he needed this stuff. It's really harsh to say that this is all Mac Miller to blame, because you're not in your right state of mind when you're that far gone. You're just not. But ultimately, the one who ends up getting hooked to the substance, it is their responsibility. Unfortunate as it may be, that's just where we are. Like I said, it sounds really heartless and harsh to say something like that, but that's just where we are. We don't have a system that's set up for people to constantly check in on your mental health, your well-being physically, where you are in life. There isn't anyone to check up on you when you're beyond 18, and sometimes there are people that are in worse off situations than that. You have to check in on yourself and make sure you're not falling prey to these things. But that's just me. It's a very hard subject to discuss or talk about, because it doesn't really have a clear-cut solution yet. But I thought, in order to analyze the situation a little bit better and to give myself a little bit more solace, I would talk about it on camera, because that's what I like to do on situations like this, as opposed to just internalize it and feel bad. So thank you for watching. Let me know if you have any thoughts about the situation, if you feel like there's someone higher or lower to blame on the totem pole here. Do you feel like it should all go on Mac? Do you feel like it should all go to the dealers? I don't know. That's just where I'm at with it, though. Thank you for watching, and yeah, I'm out. Bye.